So every day after school, I would hop on my bicycle and I would bicycle down to the milk shop. For Americans, it's like a candy store. You just buy lots of candy and bullshit. It was like a liquor store, right? So I was biking down this huge hill and I was going really, really fast. Every time I went out on my bicycle, I tried to go faster and faster every time just to see how fast I could go before I would chicken out. This one time, I went so fast that my brakes literally could not stop my bicycle. And I was approaching traffic, like full-blown traffic. At the bottom of the hill was just a road. I couldn't stop my bike. There were cars going left and right. I'm like, I'm about to die. I'm gonna die. So what happened, because I couldn't stop, was I just fucking took my bike handles and I just swerved as hard as I could onto my side. So my legs started scraping against the pavement at fucking top speed. I was in agony. My bike was skidding so close to the edge of the road. There were people in cars like honking like, what the fuck is this? There's a dude on his bike about to kill himself. But then luckily right at the very corner I just stopped. I was covered in blood all down my legs, but I was alive. No helmet, because I was a dumb kid. But goddamn, did that hurt, and I almost died. It was great. Best day of my life, 10 out of 10.
Pandora once got a bucket of flour and put it up on a shelf in a pot plant so that it just looked like a regular plant. She then tied a string to the bucket and to a drawer handle so that if anybody opened her drawer, the flour would pour onto them. Well, her sister came along, opened it, and got absolutely covered in flour. She ended up getting pretty mad at Pandora, and she told her parents what she had done. Pandora was told not to do it again, but secretly, she's planning her next trap. One time, Hellbent went to a public bathroom to take a leak. As he stood there at the urinal, an old guy came in and stood right next to him. The old guy just kinda looked over at Hellbent and said, "That's so nice. Even after seeing it 27 times, I can't help but be impressed." That was the fastest that Hellbent ever peed in his life. A really bad habit that Spinal Palm's whole family knows about is that he sometimes eats his own scabs, old and new ones. He eats them all the time. When he's bored in school, he'll check his legs, arms, back, face, almost every part of his body. It started when he was in the 1st grade, and that's when he started doing it to the point where his family made fun of him. He'll sometimes pick one that bleeds too much, though he doesn't do that as much anymore.
When I was about 8 years old, I lost my teddy bear and I was searching the entire house for it. The thing was, my brother's room was attached to the laundry room, so when I went into the laundry room to see if my teddy bear was there, my brother screamed, and when I looked, he was in the middle of, playing with his willy. So I, in return, screamed, ran out, and I didn't talk to my brother for a couple of weeks after that.
Once when Salty Squid went to the beach, he went swimming and overheard some other kids saying there had been jellyfish and shark sightings recently. He figured it was just something kids say to each other to freak them out. He continued swimming, and just as a wave approached, he dove straight in, only to find something immediately attached to his face. When he came out of the water, the kids nearby were screaming. A blue bottle jellyfish was wrapped around Salty Squid's face. He frantically pulled it off and felt his face stinging. The doctors told him if he had kept his eyes open a split second earlier, he would have been left blind.
Zaragamba was hanging out with his friends one day, and they were passing around some really cheesy jokes. It was Zaragamba's turn, so he stood up, he cleared his throat, and he said, "What cheese do you use to lure a bear?" Camembert. He thought it was hilarious, so he started laughing uncontrollably like a maniac, and then suddenly his crush walked up behind him and stared while he had tears of laughter rolling down his double chin. Nobody else was laughing, and he looked like an insane person. So she never spoke to him again.
When Salty Squid was in the 6th grade, he was sitting on a bench in the school playground. His school was in a rough part of town, but he didn't really think anything of it until he overheard a couple of other kids talking in the distance. Salty Squid didn't have many friends and thought this would be the perfect time to make some. But when he got closer, he realized he was approaching a drug deal. And it wasn't just any kind of drug deal. They were trading marijuana for Pokemon cards. Salty Squid turned around and ran as far away from the kids as possible. He never told anyone about that because he was afraid those kids would find him if he did.
When I was a kid, my dad used to secretly knock on the wall and tell us it was a being known as Bobo. It scared me and my sisters senseless. It didn't help that we had rats and sometimes you could hear them in the walls. So for 8 long years, I thought that a monster named Bobo lived in our walls.
The only time Emoji cheated on an exam was when she asked for help on a history exam in middle school, and her teacher told her the answer. She literally whispered the answer to Emoji so none of the other students would hear. It was very weird apparently, uncomfortable even. The hot, salty breath in her ear, the gentle hand on the shoulder, made her question if it was truly worth cheating at all.
When he was in 10th grade, James Shark got detention for something really stupid. Sneezing! One day when he was taking a test, he let out a loud, slimy sneeze. His teacher went off and gave him detention for disturbing the peace. He still ended up getting an A in her class and laughs about it to this day. Snoopy was dating someone once who decided it was a good idea to break up with her in the middle of a meal at a fancy restaurant. The person told Snoopy that they didn't want to see her anymore, and she started crying. The waiters were still bringing them food to their table while she tried to hide her tears. Suddenly, all the other diners started clapping and yelling, "Congratulations!" They thought that Snoopy and her date had just got engaged, and that's why she was crying. She left in the middle of the meal, confused and upset.
The most disturbing thing that ever happened to Slapped Ham on a bus was when he was going on a school field trip. After the bus stopped suddenly, the bus driver pulled out a gun and shot himself. Luckily, the teacher knew how to drive a bus. They had a small funeral for the poor bus driver, and Slapped Ham never forgot how nice he used to be. He still cries about it to this day.
Sweet Commander got a little bit too excited when he went to an opening day of a baseball game once. He drank so much beer during the game that he went to a casino afterwards and bet his entire life savings on a blackjack table. He, of course, lost it all, and then proceeded to run to an empty car park and vomit until he thought he was going to explode. He was laying in a ball while his friends tried to lift him into a car to take him home. Fortunately, he recovered, but he learned a hard lesson that day.
Back when she was in grade school, Honeybit's parents wanted her to get good grades. One day, she forgot to do her homework, so her mom told her to stand in the corner. When Honeybit stood in the corner, her mom had her sister do horrible things to her, such as stick gum in her hair. The torment went on for half an hour, and Honeybits was good for the rest of her school years.
One time when Shima was at school, her friends gave her some sweets, which always made her hyper. She was so hyper, she thought she was a tiger because she was reading a book about 2 girls becoming a tiger. So, Shima walked on her hands and knees and started to make tiger noises at everyone. Then, her ex saw her and pinned her arms to the floor. By now, her crush and a huge crowd were watching a boy pinning a girl. So Shima kicked him in the groin and slapped him to impress her crush. Unfortunately, he punched her in the gut, making her cry. Her crush stood up to her ex and made sure she was alright. A week later, her crush became her boyfriend, and her ex sits over on the other side of the classroom.
When Slapped Ham was 8, he got a new English teacher. She would say words out loud, and then tell them to read the words on the paper. Slapped Ham was dyslexic, and so when the teacher asked him to read out the words, he couldn't. That was not only because he was dyslexic, but because it was a different language as he had come from Italy. He tried again and again until she started to scream at him, "Can't you read?" She called his parents and said, "Your son doesn't want to work." Slapped Ham's parents explained that he was dyslexic, and she did the same thing over and over and over until they finally left to go to Australia.
When Doopy was 12, she was in the store checking something out when a woman came up behind her and said, "I like your dress." Doopy was about to thank the woman for the compliment. When things got weird, the woman's voice got kinda sultry, and she followed her compliment up by saying, "Of course, I like anything with lace." And then she rubbed her nipple. Even at age 12, Doopy definitely thought she meant something sexual, so she got it there pretty quickly. When Emoji was 11, his grandma took him to Burger King. When they went to the counter, they were served by a really disinterested teenager. Emoji couldn't tell she didn't give a crap about her job because she spoke in a monotone voice and had to look at her badge to even remember where she worked. The girl was barely listening when Emoji's grandma placed her order. So sure enough, their order came out all wrong. They had to send it back 3 times. Emoji's grandma got so mad she yelled,
Young lady, if you mess up my order one more time, I will come back there and make it myself.
The girl left and came back with a 4th order. But before Emoji's grandma could pick it up, the girl pushed the tray off the corner, spilling soda all over the floor. She then screamed,
Screw you and your order.
and stormed out the back exit, where her manager promptly fired her. Emoji was devastated because that last order she spilled was finally right.
When Pringle was a kid, he had a crush on a girl in his class. One day, his friend Sweet Commander told him to flirt with her so he could win her heart. As Pringle walked over to his crush, he exclaimed,
Hey girl, you look majestic, like a horse.
Apparently he said that because he thought horses were the most majestic animal in the world. She replied, did you just say my face looks like a horse? After that, he froze in awkwardness, regretting his decision immediately. When Froggy was 18, her boyfriend would stand her up on almost everything. The excuse was almost always a made-up illness. It was so obvious it got a little pathetic after a while. Nobody could be ill that often. One day he was supposed to meet Froggy, and his excuse for cancelling was, I fell over and hurt my knee. They broke up not long after that, and Froggy never looked back.
Honeybit sees plenty of bratty kids at the arts and crafts shop where she works. But the brattiest one of them was a 10-year-old fat kid who came in with his mom. The whole time they were shopping, the boy was barking at his mom. He pointed out every single thing he wanted and would throw a fit if she opened her mouth at all. When they got to the register, he grabbed a handful of Snickers bars and said, I'm getting these. When his mom timidly told him no, he went into a rampage. He started swearing at her, insulting her, and even told her she should kill herself. The mother eventually just sighed and passed Honeybits the Snickers so she could ring them up. Even though the mother bought everything he wanted, the son continued to abuse her all the way to their car. Although Honeybits detests violence, she was getting a real urge to strangle that brat.
Sweet Commando worked at an injured animal sanctuary, and one day he was doing routine cleanings in the large bird enclosures. The last enclosure was shared by 2 turkey vultures. One of the birds was notorious for biting and even pulling hair. Sweet Commando walked in, then heard the door lock shut behind him. He was now trapped with a violent bird that is capable of tearing flesh off of corpses. 45 minutes later, a father and his 2 sons showed up. Sweet Commando shoved the key through the mesh wiring so the man could unlock the door. The younger of the 2 sons stared in horror at Sweet Commando's bloody, bruised legs and said, Daddy, you told me they eat dead things, but you never told me they eat people too.
Spinal Palm's weirdest secret is that sometimes, when he's bored, he likes to suck and chew the end of his shirt. Even if he knew that doing this would leave it completely covered in saliva, he did it regardless. One time, his grandma made hot dogs, and he ate 3. Afterwards, he started sucking his shirt, and he accidentally pulled it so far into his mouth that the shirt touched the back of his throat, and he vomited all over the room. The hot dog bits got everywhere, and he was forced to clean it up. Needless to say, he grew out of the habit that day. By far, the weirdest thing that I do when I'm nervous is play with my boyfriend's used contacts. That's right. It calms me down. They're really squishy, and sometimes I stick them on my phone screen to preserve them so that they retain their texture and don't dry out from the moisture in the air. It's perfectly logical. And I've only been doing this for about 11 years. So I think it's a habit that's here to stay.
Zaragamba was at a bar once that had an arcade machine. He was quite drunk, and he decided he wanted to get the high score. It came to the boss battle, which nobody had ever beaten before. He had one last health bar, and he was sweating bullets. He was very close to beating it. So close. A crowd had gathered around him, and they were all cheering him on. The pressure and the alcohol suddenly got to him, and he started to pass out. Just as he fell down, his head hit the final attack button, and he killed the boss. The last thing he remembered before he lost consciousness was everybody cheering for him.
When they were younger, Emoji and his cousins were fans of manga. They once found a recipe for banana bread in the back of one book and decided to make it during a vacation. The ingredients weren't balanced as it required more salt than necessary and the recommended baking time was too short. When they took the bread out of the oven, it looked like an undercooked brown mushy alien that appeared to be breathing. Emoji tried to see if it was salvageable and it was the saltiest thing he ever tasted. They never tried the recipe again. A few years later, Emoji found a different banana bread recipe in a cookbook that he spruced up with chocolate chips and vanilla, which was delicious.
Sidious had one of the worst computer teachers ever. Not only was she completely hopeless with computers, but she was also super paranoid. Within every lesson, she thought one of her students were about to assault her. One time, Sidious got up to move his chair and she called the school security on him. She did that hundreds of times throughout the year whenever anyone made a sudden movement. Sidious actually felt bad for the security guards because they'd have to come all the way down to her room every day, sometimes twice a day, just to calm her down. The security guards knew she was being ridiculous and would actually apologize to whichever student was getting in trouble. The worst part is that this paranoid teacher actually took someone to court over her paranoia and won. It's a wonder Sidious learned anything that year.
Doopy's two little sisters once fought over who got which balloon. The thing was, both balloons were exactly the same. At first, she just told them to knock it off. That's when things started to get heated. Her sisters pulled each other's hair, hit each other, and screamed. Doopy got between them and pushed them to the ground. She yelled at them to knock it off, hug it out, and apologize. All before popping both balloons. She said,
Now you got nothing to fight over.
now Doopy sometimes looks back and thinks that maybe she should have tried explaining to them that the balloons were the same.
Honey Bits used to believe that people died because of her walking. Her brother told her that every time you take a step, someone in the world dies. So she yelled at her whole family to stop walking and started bawling her eyes out when they didn't listen. Those monsters! As someone who has personally lost a lot of friends to random family members walking places, I sympathize.
While in 8th grade, Gergak was tasked with reading tongue twisters to a preschool class. When he got to the classic Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers, he accidentally ended up saying,
Peter Piper picked a pickled penis?
but immediately caught himself and said,
Peppers?
to everyone else, it sounded like he just said,
Peter Piper picked a peck of penis peppers.
A teacher nudged him after the mistake, and Gergak froze, realizing what just happened. Then, without saying a word, he gave the book to the teacher and walked out speechless and embarrassed.
At the Healy main campus of Ohio University, Doopy carried a couple bags to the bus stop. She was going to her grandfather's place for the weekend right before summer break. Of course, the bus stop was on the other side of campus and there was no easy way to get to it except to go over the massive hill. Doopy got about 20% of the way up the hill and she started feeling dizzy, was sweating and had trouble breathing. Heat stroke was hitting her hard and as a result she blacked out. When she woke up, Doopy found herself lying face down on the pavement. Thankfully, Doopy had landed on one of her bags, so she didn't injure her face too badly. As she lay there, sprawled out on the bricks, dizzy and disoriented, people walked up and down the hill. Some glanced over at the injured and sick Doopy, while a couple pointed and laughed. Nobody came over to see if she was alright, if she needed help, or even if she was alive or dead. Doopy managed to sit up, get her bottle of water from her bag, and chug it. It was her sheer stubbornness that kept her conscious long enough to save her life. She got back on her feet and stumbled into the library, where she sat down and cooled off for a while before continuing to the bus stop. That was a day Doopy hated people, and her feelings haven't got any better since.
When she was younger, Melissa was laying down on her front porch watching YouTube with her earbuds in. Suddenly, a woman stopped her car and ran over to Melissa and started waving at her frantically. She couldn't hear because of her earphones, so she took them out and looked at the lady. The woman was yelling, "Hello, are you okay?" Melissa sat in shock and said, yeah, I'm just watching YouTube. She then said, "Oh, okay. I thought you might have been dead." She stood there for 3 more awkward minutes, then went back to her car and drove away. Weird.
One day, Shima's school was locked down. No one knew what was going on, but a voice came over to the intercom telling students to follow the emergency procedure. The teacher locked the door, turned off the lights, and told everyone to get under their desks. Shima huddled between 2 friends who were freaking out. Eventually, Shima's teacher looked online to find out what was happening. It turned out a local woman had broken up with her crazy boyfriend. He snapped and killed her. Then he vowed to kill her 2 kids, who happened to go to the same school as Shima. Thankfully, the guy was arrested before he could hurt anyone else. But for Shima, it was a terrifying situation to be in.
Doopy's annoying habit would have to be her OCD. If she notices something is off about her friend's hair, she literally can't help but try to fix it. One time, Doopy and her best friend were walking to class when she noticed her friend had one strand of hair sticking off the side while the rest of her hair was behind her ears. Doopy immediately threw her arm up to go and fix it, but the spontaneous movement caused her friend to flinch. They ended up in an air arm wrestling match. With her friend trying to keep Doopy's hands off her head, she eventually got the strand of hair. But now her friends keep her hair messy just to annoy her.
While Sid was working at his job one day, he had weird stomach pains. The pain was so bad that he rushed to the bathroom and ended up having explosive diarrhea. He was in the bathroom for about an hour before he felt better enough to get back to work. Then his boss told him to grab a package that had just arrived and put it on the shelf. Since the shelf was so high, Sid had to get a ladder to reach it. As he climbed the ladder, while customers and some coworkers walked around the area, diarrhea suddenly exploded from his butt. It went down the ladder and everywhere. Since that day, everyone at work makes fun of him.
When Gooby was younger, she was invited to a party and had nothing to wear. She decided to borrow her mom's very expensive antique necklace without asking her. While she was at the party, she had to use the bathroom. After bending over to flush, the necklace disappeared down the bowl, never to be seen again. When her mother found out, she was furious. She sat Gooby down in a chair, duct taped her so that she couldn't move, and put on an endless loop of the show Digimon. Gooby was a Pokemon fan and hated Digimon. She was forced to watch it for 5 long hours. She never borrowed jewelry again.
When Emoji was 16, she went out with her friends and brother to a local pizza place. Her boyfriend came to see her, but left after a little while. On the way home, Emoji was crossing the street when a car made a right turn on red and ran her over. Emoji's right leg was swollen and she had a fractured left thumb. She missed a week of school while recovering. A week later, Emoji got a call from her boyfriend. He told her he was moving and couldn't be with her anymore. Later that week, Emoji went back to school and saw him outside the school gate. They locked eyes for a second and Emoji just walked on by with her friends, not even saying a word to him. The truth was, he just didn't want to have to deal with her while she was injured.
Doopy was riding in a car with her mom when all of a sudden they began to hear someone laying on their horn. It lasted for about 3 blocks, with Doopy even saying,
"Someone has an itchy horn hand."
Then they came up to a red light when a lady who had been the one honking at them pulled up beside them. She rolled down her window and started screaming at them for cutting her off, yelling how she was gonna beat their asses and how they were lucky her kid was in her car. Doopy's mom calmly said, "Fuck off. My kid's in the car too. Mind your own damn business." 2 swears was a record for Doopy's mom. Then the lady screamed at them some more when a cop came by and pulled her over. At first, Doopy and her mom were happy, but then the cop pulled them over too. He slapped her mom with a $400 ticket for cussing.
Nixium was about 17 when this one happened. He was camping with an old friend from 6th grade when they spotted a wolf den. They checked it out and there were baby wolves inside. They were only about 2 yards from their camping spot and Nixium's friend said he would give him $5 if he brought one back with them. Nixium agreed and found a little runt who was seemingly protecting the den. He found a small stick nearby and put it between its mouth so it wouldn't bite him. Nixium picked it up and ran when he heard a howl. He stopped running and felt his heart drop. The dumbest thing was that he forgot to hold the stick while running, so the wolf cub had started howling, and Nixium put the cub down and started running back to the camp. Who knows what would have happened if he didn't put the stick in the cub's mouth? He was given $5 for his courage though.
Helbin's housemate invited a girl once over, and he assured Helbin that she would be sleeping outside in her car. She gave Helbin a strange look, but he just shrugged it off. It was this point he saw that his underwear drawer was wide open, and his door was open too. He went to investigate and saw the basement light was on. He slowly walked towards the door and opened it, and stood in shock at what he saw. His housemate's friend was standing butt naked, sniffing his underwear. She ran out the house with his underwear and drove off, still butt naked. He immediately told his housemate and they never heard from her again.
The scariest place Honeybits has ever been is in a house on top of a hill in the middle of the woods. There was a story that a woman who did witchcraft lived there. And being the idiot that she was, Honeybits went. When she got there, it smelled like dead animal. There were old broken toys everywhere and the windows were all shattered. She looked down the hall and saw something hunched on its back, walking towards her. Honeybit screamed and ran all the way home. She had nightmares about the place and doesn't go into those woods anymore.
When she was 8 years old, Ramona and her friend were in a fancy restaurant. Her friend said that she would give her $20 if she went into the bathroom with her and locked all the doors. Ramona agreed, so they went and locked all the doors by crawling under the partitions. They ran out of the bathroom and later, the employees asked if they knew who locked all the doors. Ramona's friend said it was her, pointing to Ramona. So Ramona had to go in and unlock all the doors. When she unlocked one of the stalls, she found a lady sitting on the toilet. She screamed so loud, the entire restaurant heard her. A year later, Ramona went to the restaurant again for a party, and the same lady as last time was there. She went up to Ramona and yelled, "Oi! Why did you do that?" Ramona just ran to the bathroom. And no, she never got the $20.